All right. All right. Okay, perfect. All right, well, with the new setup, just want to double check with that, and let's get rolling. And hello, and welcome to our walkthrough. So, with everyone having some issues throughout the semester so far with GitHub, I'm going to do a real nice detailed walkthrough for you guys, and then for those that have not experienced GitHub Classroom yet, for those that are new in my classes, welcome to the world of GitHub. A couple things I want to talk about with GitHub before I even get into it and why it's so important that we learn it, right? So GitHub is a source control code repository, right? So what does that mean in the real world? This is where us as professional developers, if this is the track you go down or are working in IT, you've probably heard about source control of some kind. It's how we ensure our code is safe, it's secure, and we can know who changed what and when they changed it. And that is a big part along with the collaboration, right? Because right now, if you haven't used GitHub before, the only way you ever changed your files, you changed it, you zipped it, you resent it, right? That's great, but I can't even see what you may have changed. What we can do with GitHub and what makes it so powerful is it allows us to actually see history of changes. So it's not just, oh, here's project 1 and then project I did something and then we have no idea what's actually changed. What we can actually do, and I'll show you through one of my other projects once I pull it up, is we can actually see who's changed what, when they changed it, and so on. And that allows us to actually control and track what's changing. And again, the reason that matters is when you're on a team of 5, 6, 7 developers and you're all working on the same project, it needs to have a home source control. It needs to have one source of truth, and then everything changes from there. So let's see what's a good one that's actually going to have some changes to it. This guy. So I'm going to drag this guy over. And there we go. All right, so over here on my screen, here's GitHub, right? We've seen this before. It looks pretty similar to everything else we've used, but this is one of my projects. And what we can see is there's a whole lot of commits. And now you can go through and see, oh, I added some files, I put some work, and you can actually click into each of these commit details and see what was changing. This, again, allows us this ability to make sure that whatever work we're doing is actually tracked. Now, when you look at this in the real world, right, you have a programmer, made some changes, pushed it, went to production, and then all of a sudden, it breaks. Now we can go back and be like, hey, Johnny, why the heck did you push that without anyone approving it? You broke the whole website. Now we have to all go fix it on our weekend. Source control allows us to see all those changes and be able to track them. That's why it matters. Now, let's get into this semester, right? GitHub's scary. It's got a learning curve. I get it. But once you get used to it, it is super easy and very, very powerful. And we are barely brushing the surface with what we're doing in class. And if you want to learn more about it, schedule a meeting with me. I love talking to people. I love going through this stuff, but it's a whole lot easier in person and not over text. Zoom meetings, Teams meetings, we can chat for an hour and I can show you tips, tricks, and cool things you can do with it, including one of the best ones is you can actually get into the command line instead of using GitHub Desktop. That being said, let's take a look at what we actually need to do when you have an assignment. So this page should look pretty familiar, right? You've seen this before. You've accepted some assignment, probably from my Blackboard class. You click the link, it gets you here, you hit accept assignment, you've accepted something, you refresh your page, and you get this link, right? So if we click our link, click my link, and it takes us to something that looks like this, right? Nice GitHub page. Couple things to note on GitHub. Right here, This is what I'm going to see when I grade it. If you do not see at any point when you're working with your stuff, when you're done with it, if you do not see a folder or a file name that says lab or whatever you called your project in this gray box, right? This one right here, you didn't get it up to GitHub yet. So please make sure you're going through the steps to commit and push to origin. If it's not here, when you go to github.com, I can't see it either. Because remember, with GitHub, we have our local and we have our remote. With our local, it is still on our computer. It's no different than any file source that you created somewhere on your C drive, right? I have a folder. This is local Git. Remote Git, origin Git is on the web. If it's not on remote, we can't see it. So you got to your repo, you hit code, and most likely you're going to be doing open with GitHub Desktop. Now, I highly, highly recommend every time you have an assignment, start with this. Go to GitHub, create the repo for your user account, and clone it, which is what we're doing right here, right? We're cloning this down. Choose the file path of where you store your Git stuff. I'm going to create a new folder so I know where it's at. So right now, on my local computer, I'm going to have C git demo, and I'm just going to jam it in there. You clone it wherever you store your Git repos. I always recommend the C drive because you don't really want all this junk also going if you use OneDrive or some other backup system. It's just annoying. We hit clone. We'll get a cloning my demo. Now we're on GitHub Desktop, right? We've seen this before, hopefully. You kind of know what's up. And we'll come back to this. So once we've cloned it, what's the next step to do? The next step is to go to File Explorer, go to the folder that you just cloned down, make sure it's there. Out of the gate, it should probably have a .github and a .git depending on your file settings. If you can actually show that stuff or not, that's kind of your computer settings. I have hidden folders on so I can always see that stuff. Now let's create our project, our .sln, right? So we'll do Visual Studio. I'll bring this over so you can see it. We got a nice Visual Studio. We create a new project. Let's say for this, we're going to create a web application, right? Maybe it's a C++ project. Maybe it's a whatever project you're supposed to create for your assignment. Select the right one, right? Hit next. Say my demo project or whatever it's supposed to be. Location. All right, so when you're configuring your new project, click on the ellipse, navigate once more to File Explorer, go through the thing, find it. So now my folder I'm selecting is that my demo assignment.gillisce. It's going to be that folder that was created for your Git changes. This is super important because when you do this, you'll have your solution name, a project name. Never keep this button checked. The place selection project in, or place solution and project in the same directory, do not check this button. Because in more advanced projects, in one solution, you may have 8 or 9 projects to that solution, and you do not want that solution file jammed up in one of the projects and not the other 8. You want to keep it separate. Once you uncheck it once, it should stay unchecked. Just do it once and be done with it. It'll make your life easier in the long run. Select whatever framework or whatever version. Make sure you're selecting the right one for my class because guess what? I checked that. Hit create. Sure, we'll just do an empty one since this is a demo. Creating project, yada, yada, yada. This is a great test to see if Streamlabs will behave today. And boom. Visual Studio up and running. I have an empty project, just like I would want. Now, you've gotten this far. The next thing I always recommend, either from Git changes, right? So you may not have it there yet. If you don't, I have a top menu thing. Go get. And you should be able to make sure that this thing is visible. Mine's on the left because that's where I keep my Solution Explorer. Most likely yours is on the right with Solution Explorer. Get that Get Changes tab open. Keep it there. And now you can see a whole bunch of stuff got changed. My recommendation, for sanity's sake, the minute you've created your new project, go in here, do an init, create project, hit commit all. The reason I say that is because then you can commit it. Now we can see commit with a hash created locally. The next step is to get this pushed. The easiest way is if you go back to your GitHub desktop, right? I can see right here in front of me, right? So I'm on my current repository of my demo assignment, my current branch. Now I can see push commits to origin remote. You have a local commit waiting to be pushed to GitHub. Guess what? Hit the big blue button that says push origin. It'll do some stuff. You can see up here it's 26% of the way done. It's going to take a little bit since I'm streaming, but it'll get there. While that's going, the other way to do it, if you're in Visual Studio and you want to stay in Visual Studio, no problem. This button says push, right? So it's an arrow with an underline under it. You click that and it will do the exact same thing that blue button that said push origin does. Either way works, but please make sure one of them gets pushed. Once it's done, you can go back to GitHub, we can refresh, and it's not done yet. We're only 71% of the way there. Hooray, slow internet. And now I can see there's no local changes. So now if we go here, refresh our GitHub page, now you can see I have a My Demo project and init create project. This shows me my code has made it back to GitHub and other people can see it as long as they have access to my repo. Hopefully that makes sense. If not, please, please, please reach out and ask for help. The sooner you get through this hurdle, the easier everything will become. Now, I'm sure you're saying that, well, that's great. Now, what happens if I already created my solution before I clone my repo? Well, there's a really easy trick, and it is not zipping a folder up. And I say that because I saw multiple attempts this past week and in the past of you guys trying to submit and drag and drop file uploads to GitHub and getting yelled at for it. That is because file uploads are not the correct way to do anything. You should not be dragging and dropping files onto GitHub. It will always break your stuff because that's not the way we need to do it for these large web projects. So let's walk through that. Right? So let's say we have an assignment, right? We've accepted our assignment, but before that, I'm sure I have a demo project somewhere. Let's say we've created our project and it's hanging out. Right here, right? So oh, that's not a Visual Studio project. That'd be a bad one. What's in here? Right? So we have our Visual Studio project, right? We've all seen this before. You guys know what these folder structures look like, hopefully, even if you don't understand most of it, because guess what? I still don't understand all of it either. So we have our Visual Studio solution and stuff. In the past, right, you guys would just take all this, right-click, compress to zip file. We don't use zip files anymore, right? We're using Visual Studio. So let's say we finished our assignment, right? We got our solution, everything's working, we've tested it, and we're happy with it. what you can do, right? We've accepted it. Now we have our GitHub repo set up, right? So let's set up in desktop. We hit open. Right, we've cloned this guy down. It's got my local path already, so I'm good. And we clone it. So now, right, we have our repository locally. Now we can do something with it. So if we go to File Explorer, I'm going to minimize some of this because I got a lot going on. If I go to demo, I have this empty thing, and I need to get that solution over there. Easiest way to do it, open 2 instances of File Explorer, right? I'm going to snap them so they're really easy to see. So on one side, I have my empty repo that I need to submit my project on. The other side has my solution and its folders. All you need to do, highlight it, copy, right? Well, that's cut, which would also work. We're going to copy, go into our other folder, paste. That's it. Now you go to GitHub Desktop, and you can see a whole bunch of changed files, right? So now you can do your... So if we're going to commit something from GitHub Desktop, add a summary, add my finished code, hit commit to main, it'll commit. Once you're commit, on the left side you would see 0 files changed, and this should look familiar. No local changes, but we need to publish a branch because this one would be a little messed up. In theory, that would say you need to push to origin, and away we go. That's all you need to do. If you already have an existing solution set up and you need to bring it over to the GitHub repo for class, take your files, drag and drop it. You don't need a zip. There shouldn't be a zip. And then once again, once it's all done, we can go to our GitHub repo, and you can always get back to it through the assignment link, but it'll be github.com and then some URL depending on the lab name and depending on the class. And you should be able to see at some point. It's still pushing. When it's done, we'll be able to see it up on github.com, and then we will know that it's good to go. And that should cover the walkthrough, right? Pretty straightforward, at least from my perspective. I've used this for years though, so I understand it can be a little confusing. All you got to do is you got to set up that repo, clone your repo down, do your work, commit it, and push. The big part is commit and push. If you don't do that, it's just on your local machine and I can't see it. And when I can't see it, then we all get sad because you get a 0 for the assignment, and no one likes that. So now that it's done, right, I can see I could just fetch something. Now I can go back to GitHub Online, refresh, and now I can see my project is there. And I could take this, and then I would be able to go to Blackboard, submit the done, and you're off and running. Hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully that clears up any confusion. Other pieces of GitHub just to navigate around a little bit, because one of the big things I do use is the feedback pull request, right? So all of our assignments, if you click on pull request, there's one called feedback. In here, after you've gotten a grade on Blackboard, make sure if you don't check GitHub when you get emails about notifications, make sure to jump in here and make sure I didn't do anything. Because I'll come in here when I'm grading, I'll click on the files changed, and if there's something confusing about your code or there's actual bugs in your code, this is where I'm going to come in. And since I didn't really do much, I'll just do it right here. I'll come in here, do a comment, tag you, and add my comment about something. And what's nice is when I add the comment, you can respond directly back to that comment if you need clarification, you need help with it, it doesn't make sense what I'm asking about, or to vend why you did something. If I'm just like, why'd you do it this way? What made you decide this? This is a great way for us to communicate back and forth because we can take this a step farther. Let's say it's week 1, right? Or let's say the assignment just opened on Sunday. It's Tuesday. You had free time. You knocked it out. But you're confused about something. Or you're trying to work on it and you're stuck. You're getting an error. It doesn't make sense. Something just isn't running the way you would expect to after watching videos and doing the whatever lecture material is available, and you're stuck. If it's code related, if it's not on GitHub, I will not look at it. I'm not going to respond to stuff where there's a zip file in my email. I need you guys to put it on GitHub so I can see it, I can pull it down, and I can work on it. Because what this allows me to do is I can pull your code down, run it like I wrote it, test the build, test anything, do any debugging I need to, and I can actually comment directly back, and we can have a full conversation back and forth over something you're stuck on. It makes it so much easier as well when we meet, because most likely I'm going to say, hey, set up something on Calendly, schedule a meeting with me, let's talk through it together, because I want to show you guys how I would approach the problem solve. Because half of coding is fixing a bug. Because we're human, we're never going to write it perfectly the first time when it gets complex. You're going to hit bugs, and half of the fight of my day as a developer is debugging and figuring out why the thing that's supposed to work doesn't work. So that being said, make sure you're always getting stuff up there as soon as you can, especially if you're going to be reaching out with a specific question around the code for an assignment. Because if I don't go to GitHub Classroom, click on your name, and the code's not there, my response back to you is please push the code. Save us a round trip conversation. Just get it up there first, please. With that, that's kind of the detailed how to clone it down, how to set up the project if it's empty, or if you already did your project, how to get it over to GitHub easily. Again, I do not want you guys, if you're on GitHub, I do not want to see a thing where you're taking the CS proj and dragging it over like this. Because guess what? When you do that and you just commit it, I can tell. Because once it's there, I can tell because it'll say add files via upload. If it says add files via upload, I am going to start rejecting them. Hands down, if you're not doing it through GitHub Desktop, you need to reach out and ask for help. I'd love to help you guys. I'm here to help you guys succeed. I'm here to help show you guys cool tricks, cool ways, and get you prepared to go out and be the best developers after you're finished with your program. And to do that, you got to learn a little bit on GitHub. The more you learn, the easier you can walk into an internship and answer questions if they ask you about your experience with it. So with that being said, hopefully that helps. Please reach out with questions. I'm here to help you guys. And with that, we're going to wrap up this tutorial and then go check out other lecture videos.